All right, so let's talk about organizing. But before that, okay, you have to remember that some people are born with power, others might not have as much power. They need to come together to build collective power in order to make things happen. Okay. Anyways, let's go back to organizing. So what is organizing? When we speak of organizing, it says here that it is a process of arranging and allocating work, authority, and resources among an organization's members so that they can achieve organizational goal. Okay, so you arrange, you collect, you allocate resources, work, authority, okay, among the members of the organization. Why? Because you wanted to achieve organizational goal. So what's the purpose of organization? So there are several purposes of organization. Number one is that you determine the tasks to be performed. Okay, to achieve an objective, you divide the tasks into a specific job. You group the job into departments. You specify reporting and authority relationships. Delegate the authority necessary for task accomplishment. And you deploy resources in a coordinated fashion. So let's talk about organizational structure. So when you speak of organizational structure, it is a framework in which the organization defines how a task or tasks are divided, how resources are deployed, and departments are coordinated. Okay, so these are the different characteristics of organizational structure. So the set of formal tasks assigned to individuals and departments. Okay, it talks about formal reporting relationships, which includes the line of authority, okay, decision of responsibility, number of hierarchical levels, and span of managers' control. So this design, it is also the design of systems to ensure effective coordination of employees across departments. Okay, so this is an example of an organizational chart. As you can see, it is hierarchical. Okay, so we will talk more on the organizational chart later on. Okay, so another example here. Okay, okay. So what is an organizational design? When we speak of organizational design, it involves the 6 key elements wherein we will discuss these individually. So what are these 6 elements? You have your work specialization, departmentalization, chain of command, span of control, centralization, decentralization, or formalization. Okay, so that is your organizational design. When we speak of your organizational redesign, it is when a manager or managers develop or change their organizational structure. So, um, there are also important features of vertical structure that we have to remember. We have your work specialization, the chain of command, authority, responsibility, and delegation, line and staff authority, span of management or the span of control, centralization and decentralization, and of course, formalization. Now, let's talk about these individually. So when we speak of your work specialization or the division of labor, it talks about the degree to which organizational tasks are subdivided into individual jobs. So when work specialization is actually extensive, employees specialize in a single task. They can focus on a single task rather. So if they focus to a single task, of course, they will do it well. They can do it excellently because their main focus is on their specialization, diba? So job tends to be small, but they can be performed efficiently. Okay, so we also have here the chain of command. When we speak of the chain of command, this is an unbroken line of authority that links all individuals in the organization and specifies who reports to whom. Okay, so the chain of command is comprised of your unity of command and your scalar principle. Chain of command, okay, again, the unity of command talks about an employee, okay, is held accountable to only one supervisor. Scalar principle, on the other hand, talks clearly defined line of authority in an organization. Okay, so here is an example of an organizational chart. So unity of command, it says that, of course, a staff, for example, is held accountable to one superior or supervisor in this case. Okay, so in this case, this staff here is held accountable, okay, to the sales supervisor, not to the promotional supervisor. Okay, in the unity of command, well, we mentioned earlier that it's a clearly line of authority in the organization. So in here, there is a clear line of authority in the organization. So the manager of the marketing department has authority over sales supervisor and promotional supervisor. So it's not possible that the manager of the purchasing department will meddle between the affairs, okay, or the duties and responsibilities of the sales supervisor and the promotional supervisor. Why? Because as you can see, the manager of the purchasing department has no authority over them. Okay. All right, moving on. So when we speak of authority, responsibility, and delegation, first, when you say authority, this is the formal and legitimate right of a manager to make decisions, issues, orders, and allocate resources to achieve organizationally desired outcomes. And responsibility, on the other hand, talks about the duty to perform the task or activity an employee has been assigned. Okay, so there are several characteristics of authority. So it's vested in the organization. It's given to organizational positions and basically not people. So even if you do not like the person, if she or he has the authority, of course, you have to respect the position. Okay, so authority is accepted by subordinates. So authority flows down the vertical hierarchy. Okay, so there is the acceptance theory of authority. It argues that a manager has authority only if subordinates choose to accept his command. Okay. However, if you work in an organization, you have to obey, okay, those who have authority over you. Otherwise, you might be, accused of insubordination. All right. Okay. Now, let's talk about accountability. So, accountability is the fact that the people with authority and responsibility are subject to reporting and justifying task outcomes to those above them in the chain of command. So, accountability. Delegation is a process managers use to transfer authority and responsibility to positions below them in the hierarchy. Okay, so these are some of the approaches in delegating more effectively. So delegate the whole tasks, select the right person, ensure that authority equals responsibility, give thorough instruction, maintain feedback, evaluate and reward performance. Okay. So let's take a look at an illustration and see what happens if, for example, the authority, okay, is less than the responsibility. What happens if the authority is less than responsibility? So when managers have responsibility for the task outcome but little authority, the job is possible but difficult. Yeah, why? Because the subordinates would not follow instructions. They would not obey those who have authority because the person has less authority. Okay, so in here, maybe they rely on persuasion and luck. But what happens if authority is greater than responsibility? So when the managers have authority exceeding responsibility, they may become tyrants. They use their authority towards frivolous outcomes. So supposed to be, the authority should equate responsibility. Okay, now let's talk about your line and staff authority. So line authority form a form of authority in which individuals in management positions have the formal power to direct and control immediate subordinates. Okay, so staff authority, this is a form of authority granted to staff specialists in their area of expertise. So let's have an example of your line authority. So this is an example of your line authority. Okay, so in here, your boss, okay, has authority over their immediate subordinate. And this boss here has authority over their subordinate. Okay. Staff authority talks about the staff or subordinates who have authority because of their expertise. So this is an example there. So in here, this here, there, the staff, okay, over here have authority wherein they report directly to the president. But when we speak of line authority, okay, if you can see, there is a solid line over here. So meaning to say the president has authority over the VP Finance, VP Production, and VP Marketing. So the VP or the Vice President of Finance has authority over the head of the accounting department. Similarly, the Vice President of Marketing has authority over the National Sales Manager. Okay, in here, the legal department and the human resource department, since they are outsourced. Why outsourced? It's represented by a broken line. Yan. They do not need to report to any of these vice presidents here already, but rather they can report immediately to the president. They have the so-called staff authority. Okay. All right, now let's talk about your tall structure and your flat structure. So a management in your tall structure, it is a structure characterized by an all narrow span of management and relatively large number of hierarchical levels. Flat structure, on the other hand, a management structure characterized by an overall broad span of control and relatively few hierarchical levels. So this is an example of your tall structure. It is hierarchical. Okay. It's formed of many hierarchical levels. On the other hand, this is an example of your flat structure. Very few hierarchical levels. Okay. How about centralization and decentralization? So when we speak of centralization, the location of decision authority is near the top organizational level. So relying on one individual to make decisions and provide direction for the company. So meaning to say the decision making would come basically to maybe one person. Perhaps it's just the manager who makes the decision making, or maybe the president of an organization would make the decision making of the overall organization. On the other hand, when we speak of your decentralization, the location of decision authority is near the lower organizational levels. So often have several individuals responsible for making decisions and running the business. So in here, maybe the manager or maybe the supervisor can make decisions already. Okay. So in your centralization, maybe only one person in the top level management would make decisions. But in your decentralization, perhaps some of those who are in the lower level of the organization can make decisions already to run the business. Okay, so formalization. Let's talk about formalization. So when we speak of formalization, it's the written document used to direct and control employees, which includes rule books, policies, procedures, job descriptions, and regulations. So formal organization can be seen and represented in chart form. Okay. And informal organization, on the other hand, this is a network unrelated to a firm's formal authority, structure, or social interactions among its employees. So when you enter or when you work in a company, okay, you have your formal organization represented by your organizational chart. That's an example of your formal organization. Informal organization, the gathering between friends and colleagues, okay, is an example of informal organization. Okay, there you go. Departmentalization refers to the basis on which individuals are grouped into departments and departments into total organization. It includes designing an organization, which involves choosing an organizational structure that will enable the company to most effectively achieve its goals. Okay, so that is departmentalization. We'll give an example later on. No? So there are several approaches to departmentalization. We have your traditional and contemporary approaches. So first, let's talk about your traditional approaches. So functional structure. People are basically grouped together in department by common skills and work activities, such as in an engineering department and accounting department. So in here, as you can see, this is an example of departmentalization. So there is a department, for example, for your research and development, and there is also a department for operations and for marketing. So they are grouped together based on their specialization or maybe based on their function. Right. Next is your divisional structure. So departments are grouped together into separate, self-contained divisions based on a common product, program, or geographical region. So diverse skills rather than similar skills are the basis of departmentalization. So this is an example of your divisional structure. So here they are grouped together based on the product that they sell. For example, di ba? It's not based on their function or their specialization. So in this department, for example, you can see they have their own research development, they have their own manufacturing, they have their own accounting, their marketing, and there's customer service. Similarly with the other products. So this is an example of division structure. or divisional structure rather. Okay, moving on. We also have your customer market division. So when you speak of your customer market divisions, it's appropriate for companies whose products are purchased in multiple combinations by several types with unique needs. Okay, so for example, aircraft manufacturer, of course, such as Boeing and Lockheed Martin, have different marketing efforts for government, military, and commercial markets. Or maybe electric utilities separate their markets into residential and commercial accounts, so different accounts. Another for um, the what's this? Residential account, and another account for commercial. Okay, so in here, for example, for bank president, since we have different needs, so we have two vice presidents. Okay, maybe one for retail customers and another for commercial customers. Okay, there you go. Geographical division, on the other hand, of course, we're talking about the geographic location. So we have different departments based on their location. Okay, moving on. Oh, okay. So, for example, banks with suburban branches, maybe magazine publishers with regional editions, hotel chains with regional divisions, or maybe companies with international and domestic sales divisions. Okay. A matrix structure, on the other hand, talks about functional and divisional chains of commands are implemented simultaneously and overlay one another in the same departments. So two chains of command exist and some employees report to two bosses. So it's possible if it's a matrix structure. So here is, oh, sorry. In addition to that, a matrix organization structure, it's where people have more than one boss, as mentioned earlier. So example, Shell Oil, Kraft Foods, IBM, or Westinghouse. Okay, so here is an example of your matrix structure. As you can see, okay, for example, product manager A, they have several bosses. Okay, so we have here they report to their VP product design, VP manufacturing, VP finance, or VP marketing. Okay, so there. This team here reports to several bosses. Okay, moving on. So team-based structure. So this is the organization creates a series. Oh, okay, sorry. Team-based structure. This is where an organization creates a series of teams to accomplish specific tasks and to coordinate major departments. So teams can exist from the office of the president all the way down to the lower level. Okay, network structure, on the other hand, is when an organization becomes a small central hub electronically connected to other organizations that perform virtual functions. Departments are independent, contracting services to the central hub for a profit. So departments can be located anywhere in the world. Why? Because it's a network structure. It could be run by um, what's this? Internet. Yeah. All right. So this ends our lecture. Thank you very much for joining me.